competitor could come and copy your trait with minimal cost. But it is also important to look at the other side, which is maintaining access to genetic diversity, because closed IP regimes could block use of wild germplasms, which could also be bad. So there is legal certainty, which is essential for breeders and plant genomic scientists, because they must know whether their inventions can be protected, how they are protected, whether licensing burdens will deter partnerships, and whether there is freedom to operate or not. So in policy terms, there is a classical tension between what is considered innovative incentives versus public goods, and too much exclusivity will stifle downstream innovation and restricts access on one hand, but then too little undermines investment. So the task for you in this domain is to really find the balanced pathway forward. So from the rights management perspective, there are complexities, as I said, for plant breeders and genomics innovators, because there are overlap of different IP systems. For instance, you can have the patent protecting your genetic trait, functional annotation, and plant variety may help protect the whole organism. So, and then there are trade secrets that could help protect the internal breeding methods. There are also in EU the genomic databases. So one has to look into these different overlapping IP systems, which are further complicated by global IP landscapes, where you have international agreements like TRIPS, WIPO. You have to look into. There are regional regimes that come into play, like the EU Database Directive. There are country-specific laws. So for each of these people, you have to look at the different definitions and exceptions, which is further complicated by benefit sharing obligations from access from the CBD Nagoya Protocol. So there are some obligations you have to take into consideration, which is further complicated by the new treaty from WIPO, the GR Traditional Knowledge Treaty. One has to look into that as well when you're deciding which way to move forward. So the rights management in plant genomics is really like a multi-layered chessboard. You have to look into all these different aspects. Like Dr. Pomatani said, no more. Then from the sequencing data perspective, it's also important, like Dr. Pomatani has already said, that raw DNA sequence data is really generally treated as a discovery, so not really considered eligible for patentability without added functional insights. Although functional annotations and traits are patentable subject matter, but it has to be substantiated by both structural and credible utility support. Then there is the EU's database protection, and then copyright, which is again only for expression. So you would get protection for the curated annotated genomics, atlas, or user interfaces, but not really the sequence itself. So in practice, what many people end up doing is provide sequences freely, but license annotations or value-added analysis under stricter legal terms. So the key takeaway for plant genomic scientists and green domain is really to recap that DNA sequences per se are really patentable, but if you have a functional and utility aspect to it, it's considered patentable depending on how well you disclose it. The plant breeder's right, plant variety protections can be an effective tool under WIPO system and or the sui generis system where either apply. So most real-world strategies actually involve hybrid IP, wherein you would probably end up protecting your traits by patents, the varieties by the plant variety or plant breed, would protect your know-how. And above all, as has been basically said time and again, your quality of disclosure, how strong of a teaching and how reproducible your teaching is from your application, that determines the patent's survival. So now the next domain that I'm going to touch upon is important for us, which is the traditional knowledge and community rights groups. Now for them, the stakes are higher because it's not just economic, but the protection of their IP assets is deeply tied to their identity, sovereignty, heritage, and equity. So communities are really the custodians of biodiversity, and it is important that they are protected against risk of biopiracy and misappropriation of their traditional knowledge. And this is only getting more complicated with the advent of digital sequence information, because it raises new threats where companies may access sequences for different TKs rather than the physical samples, and then thereby basically completely sidestepping the ABS obligations. So digital biopiracy is becoming a thing that we need to think about. So in short, IP and GRs is not about incentives when it comes to these communities. It's also about justice, recognition, rights, and autonomy. And community, in fact, ended up being confronted by a lot of structural disadvantages with the existing IP systems, wherein something like patents and PVRs are designed more for the support and innovation of individual inventors and companies, but not for communal or generational custodianship. Sequencing data can be commercialized by third parties, like we said, without the communities ever seeing any downstream benefits. There is basically an asymmetry of power, where limited legal, financial, or technical capacity from the community